am so excited to have Amy here. Amy is from Zingerman's, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. It's such a pillar of community and business in the Ann Arbor area. Amy Emberling is a co-managing partner of Zingerman's Bakehouse and a lifetime baker and chef. She entered the world of food right after college, and she was one of the original bakers at Zingerman's when it opened in 1992. So we are very pleased to have her here today. We're also going to be touring Zingerman's tomorrow. It's the first stop on our tours tomorrow. So Amy will be presenting about staff engagement, and I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank all of you. I appreciate the RBA for having me. I'm really grateful that you all made the trip to come, that Dawn was willing to host. Dawn has been an important partner of the bakery. I think for the entire history, since I started as one of the bakers, I have to tell you right from the beginning, I was not involved in everything. So staff engagement has definitely evolved over the years at Zingerman's Bakehouse and at Zingerman's overall. So I decided, Marissa and I discussed, what might be good for me to speak about, and I thought that one of the most distinctive things at Zingerman's Bakehouse or at Zingerman's was how staff is involved in the work that we do. I was going to give a talk at the Bread Bakers Guild Camp Bread. Did any of you go to Camp Bread by any chance? Okay, Marissa did. I wasn't able to make it. And that was going to be focused on just one aspect of staff engagement. And I thought today it would be better to talk about all kinds of the different things that we do, because I hope that there's something that I say today that, sparks something in you that either helps you enhance or change your staff engagement. I thought the more different things that I said or told you that we did, maybe the greater possibility that there'd be something that worked for you in your organization, whether it's a bakery or you're working at the university or wherever it happens to be. Right from the beginning, I always want to say that Zingerman's, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Zingerman's, because although you may think people know about Zingerman's, lots of people don't know about Zingerman's, so I'll tell you about Zingerman's in a second. But what I'm going to talk about today has evolved and been created over 42 years. So if you are sitting there and thinking, well, we don't have that, and we can't make that, and we can't do that. Yeah, we didn't have this either at the beginning. And even I worked at so the Delicatessen was the first Zingerman's business, and it opened in 1982. And I came to the bakery when it started in 1992, and we didn't have most of this then. And then when I worked there for 4 years, and I left in 96 and came back in 2000, and some of this started to be implemented. So many of these things can evolve over time, and you don't need all of them, and you don't need them exactly in this way, and you can pick and choose. It's like a menu and figure out exactly what might be good for you in your bakery if it's interesting to you. Okay, so just a tiny bit about Zingerman's for those of you who don't know. So Zingerman's, we refer to ourselves as a community of businesses. That's not a legal entity at all. It's a group of 10 businesses, and we all work cooperatively together and use the Zingerman's name. We're all located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we have a joint vision and mission, and something that's very distinctive about us is that we're going to stay in the Ann Arbor area. We have talked off and on over the years as we kind of rethink our vision. Might we leave or not? We definitely will not. So we're really into being local, and we've been into the local movement since before there was really a movement about it. Another thing that's distinctive is that each of these businesses is independently owned. So the founders of Zingerman's Delicatessen do own a percentage of each of the other businesses. At the beginning, they wanted to own 51% of each one of the other businesses, but after all these years, and they're both between 10 and 15 years older than I am now, so they're planning their succession, and so many of us have bought them out or down to 10%. So the businesses are owned by different people, and we buy and sell between each other. It's not a big corporation. We're not VPs. We're private business owners. Most of the businesses, all but one, some of you were here yesterday and you worked with Zingtrain, are food businesses. And we're all about traditional, full-flavored artisan food. So there's a coffee company and a creamery. You're all coming to the Seth side. That's what we call where the producers are at Zingerman's. You're coming there tomorrow. And you'll see the coffee company, the creamery, the candy company. Zingerman's mail order ships our foods and then many other specialty foods all over the country. There's Zingerman's Delicatessen. Zingerman's Roadhouse is an American restaurant. And so there are 10 of us, and we work together. We really care about our community and giving to the community and being a part of the community, and so that's one of the reasons why we've decided that we'll always stay local. So I'm part of Zingerman's Bakehouse, as I said. We opened in 1992, so we're about 32 years old now, and I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that we do for staff engagement. I'm going to be a little unorthodox and skip down a little bit. Here you go. As I was preparing for this talk, sometimes if you've been in a world long enough, that's the way culture works, you don't notice it anymore. I started to think as I was preparing, is this true? Is this really what we do? Or is this just what I think now after all this time? And I was reading a case study. The University of Michigan writes case studies to teach their business school students. And so what those are is they write sort of stories, descriptions of some real world experience of businesses. And then they use them in class to get discussion going and to teach. And so they're writing one about Zingerman's right now about staff ownership. And so as I was reading it and preparing for this, I found this quote in there from one of the founders, Paul Saginaw. And it's really sort of explains to you why we're doing what we're doing. From the beginning, we wanted to build an extraordinary organization, not the biggest, not the most profitable, but an organization where decisions would not be based on who had the most authority, but on whoever had the most relevant information. And that's really what we do now. It's a very collaborative organization in each one of the different businesses where staff are really involved with leading, managing, making decisions. We wanted to invite everyone to help run the business and convey that each one of us was personally responsible for its success. So we often say, with opportunity, there's responsibility. So you want opportunity at work, that comes with taking on some of the responsibility. Okay, so these ideas were ideas that the founders, Paul Saginaw and Ari Weinstock, just had. It wasn't that they, thought, okay, what's the best way to run a business? And they actually, neither one of them had gone to business school. They hadn't taken any management courses. They had met each other working in a restaurant group that still exists in Ann Arbor. One of them, Paul, was the front of the house manager. Ari started as a dishwasher, then became a line cook. Eventually, he became a kitchen manager. And so they got to know each other there. And this is just how they wanted to work. I'm sure that some of us in this room have thought about, when we create something on our own, we want to take some of the things that we've learned from where we've worked and some of the things we want to do in opposition to what the organizations we've been in. So I think they were just forming their own ideas about what they wanted. And many of the Zingerman's partners and employees who are now working with us were there because this is how we want to work. It's not necessarily that we're in no way think it's the only way to work. It has advantages and disadvantages, and near the end, I'm going to outline some of those to you. It's just a choice of a model that we're interested in because that's just kind of who we are and how we feel, what we feel comfortable with doing. So let's go back to the beginning. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of exactly what we do on a day-to-day basis, I'm really good with this, I want to tell you about a couple of the philosophies that are the foundation of this thinking. So they had these ideas, and then they thought, well, are we crazy doing this? And they weren't scientists and sort of trying to prove that it was a good thing by using, a controlled experiment. They went out and they started reading, and they found two people who wrote books. Robert Greenleaf, he is no longer alive. He wrote a book called Servant Leadership, and Peter Block wrote a book called Stewardship that really spoke to them and sort of more eloquently explained what it was that they wanted to do and why they wanted to do it. But this is a really great book. It's called The Case for Servant Leadership. You see, it's very small. It's very easy to read. It's a nice little synopsis of what Robert Greenleaf had come up with. So here's a definition of servant leadership. Servant leadership holds that the primary purpose of an organization should be to create a positive impact on its employees and community, rather than using money as the sole motive. And then stewardship is the willingness to hold power without using rewards or punishments to get things done. So the idea is the more you use your power, the less power that you have. And then we're trying to form an organization in which people are doing things because they're involved in it, they understand it, and they're behind whatever the mission and vision of the organization is. There's one quote that I think it really sums it up for me, that I think about as a leader and how I hope to engage with the staff. that perhaps is even better than what's up there. And it was written by Robert Greenleaf, and he says, the best test of servant leadership and difficult to administer is, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, and more likely themselves to become servants? So when I'm assessing whether I'm doing a good job, kind of look back at that quote and say, are the people who are working at the bakery, are they growing as people? Are they becoming healthier? Are they wiser? Are they freer? Are they more autonomous? Are they learning? Are they getting something out of working at the bakery rather than having the bakery just be taking their labor from them, so that when they leave, which is inevitably most people leave, they will be able to take something with them going forward and feel like they got something from their employment experience rather than having something just taken from them. So servant leadership, stewardship, those are the sort of philosophical foundations at the organization. And now we actually teach that rather than just saying, you know, Apollinaire thought this was kind of just the nice way that they wanted to do their work. All right, this is as a sort of a model to help you understand in very extreme terms the differences between a servant leadership model and a traditional hierarchical model. Now these are the extreme types, okay? They're like pure types. And there are probably practically no organization in the country that is doing either one of these in its extreme form, but it's a really much easier way of explaining what the difference is between the two. So in our traditional model, which most of us are completely familiar with, where is often the energy of the organization going? It's often going sort of up the organizational chart. Or many people would say, you know, who am I working for? Who am I trying to make look good? In the most extreme crass discussion of sort of capitalism in the United States. So the energy goes up to the CEO. Well, in a servant leadership model, the energy is going to the frontline staff and then finally to the customers. And so as servant leaders, we're responsible for the success of the people who are working in the organization, and we're here to give them energy in order so that they can do their work well and then serve the customers well. You know, that's all kind of very pie in the sky, might be difficult for people to activate. So in our organization, we don't spend tons of time talking about the philosophy of it, but we do have a class for all managers, but then we try to turn it into something that they can really live. And the idea of living it and doing these things, which I'll explain in 1 second, is it's kind of like doing drills if you're on a basketball team, or playing scales if you're learning how to play piano. Our idea is if you practice these steps, that you can understand the philosophy and eventually you may become a servant leader. You may decide it's just not the way that you want to lead. So providing vision, that means, you know, having people in your group, whether you're a manager of a department or leading an entire business, be able to think about, okay, where do we want to go in 5 years? What's our preferred future? Giving great service to the staff. We make this very basic. It's like, did you put the schedule up on time? You told them it would be up every Thursday at 4 o'clock. Is it up on every Thursday at 4 o'clock? Are you playing favorites? Do you gossip? Are you doing performance reviews on time? Doing the things that you say you're going to do and not doing the things you say you won't do. Managing in an ethical manner, learning and teaching, that's a big part of our organization. And I'm going to skip down to number 6, saying things. So we try to teach people how to say things, and we spend a lot of time doing appreciations at the end of meetings or in our company newsletters. So what we teach is that by doing these things, you may become a servant leader. And then this is, for those people who prefer math over a lot of words, this is just a way of depicting this idea of the value of our authority is inversely related to the frequency of how much we use it. So we, as leaders in our organization, we don't spend a lot of time using our authority or saying, do it because I told you to do it. Most of the time if we've gotten to that point, unless it's an emergency situation, we know that perhaps we're not doing as good a job leading or have sort of lost the team. All right, and then once again, as with servant leadership, we have a way of trying to make stewardship more approachable to the team. So we spend a lot of time talking with everybody about, okay, what are we doing here? What is the vision for the bakery? What are our goals? What kind of food are we trying to make? What kind of service are we trying to give to customers? And then we hear back, okay, well, I think we should do it this way. And then there's lots of conversation. And so we exchange purpose, and then we come together and we kind of decide on, okay, what are the results that we want, and what are we all agreeing to do, negotiate to agreement. As a steward of the organization, it doesn't mean that as a leader I get to abdicate and say, oh, well, it's just all for the staff to decide. No, we're deeply involved in doing it together. And what do we get for this? People feel free, and they develop a conscious commitment to what we're doing. So much more committed because they were a part of deciding what we were going to do. So when you're in the thick of it, of making it happen, and it's not so, you find yourself in that stage of a project that's a little messy or a little bit difficult, at least we can all look at each other and say, okay, well, we decided we were going to do this together. So, okay, what are we going to do to push through? Rather than another situation is if I just decided what we were going to do and told everyone this is what's going to happen, and then it gets messy, and then what happens? Oh my God, why did she decide that? Why did they decide that? Not a good situation. Which reminds me, so when we have groups of people that have started at the bakery, if there's enough people at a time, I'll do a welcome to the Bakehouse class. And one of the primary things I say in that class is, there's no they here anymore. We're all we. Because I can hear people when you're out on the floor. They decided this, they decided that. Like, okay, there's no they here anymore. We're all we. Your opinion counts. And I think what shocks them sometimes is that, you know what, they've all announced, who they are and what their job is going to be. In about 3 weeks, you will have done your job more than I have done it in the last 20 years. So when I come and I say, hey, we need to make a decision about, do we need a new mixer, or where should we install this new piece of equipment, and I ask you about it, and I say your opinion counts, I really mean it, because you may have more information that is relevant to this decision than I may have at this point. So there's no they here anymore, it's all we. And if you go through this kind of process with people to share, it's been our experience that you get a lot of commitment and a lot of engagement and care about what we're doing. Okay, that's the end of the philosophy. So if you're not into that kind of stuff and you just want to know more of the nitty-gritty and the basic of how we do it, here we go. We happen to teach a lot of classes in Zingerman. So you may be in a smaller organization, say, I don't have time for classes, or we don't do that. You don't have to have classes. When I started the bakery, there were 8 of us, and the values and the feelings about all these things were coming through just in day-to-day actions. You could just put this up as a sign in your bakery or your organization, wherever it is, and have it without ever having a class. You might just explain it to someone. But I want to explain the relevance of it. In our organization, we have orientation classes. People probably take 6 to 8 classes in the first 3 months that they're in the organization. At the beginning of every single class, we go over what we call the training compact. By the end of those classes, people can repeat the compact. If you look at it, it's not that exciting. Actually, it may be a little boring. What does the trainer agree to? Okay, I'm going to give you clear expectations. I'm going to provide the training resources, like a workbook or the presentation. I'm going to recognize performance. We mark off that people took the class. And maybe there's going to be some kind of reward for the performance. And then we say, okay, what's the trainee responsible for? They take responsibility for the effectiveness of their training. So like today, if I said to you, okay, what do you need to do to take responsibility for the effectiveness of your learning during our time together? What would you say? What are some of the things that you could do?
Listen, show up, be on time.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else as good a trainee as
Take notes.
Take notes, great. So all those things. Okay, then I always say, so if you had to divide it as a percentage, who's more responsible for the effectiveness of our time together today? The trainer or the trainee? 50-50, 70-30, 100-100. What would you say? 50-50 is what most people say. So it's a bit of a trick question. I'm sure you knew I was setting you up. what we say is it's 100, 100.
Oh.
Because I can't make anyone learn, and I can't make you listen, and I can't make you concentrate, right? Can't do that. And you can't make me actually teach. We have to come here independently and give it our all together. And so the point of me bringing this up today is that right from the beginning of someone's tenure in our organization, we try to tell them, you have agency. You make a difference to your experience here. You are responsible for your success here. We are also responsible for your success, but you are too. So in our organization, because it's food service, we have a lot of young people. So they have maybe recently spent years and years in school, where they're supposed to sit and be quiet and listen to the teacher. And then we're telling them, no, not here. Your opinion counts, you have agency, and you need to engage, you need to ask questions, you need to share feedback. And so right from the beginning, we try to tell people, remind people, and change the paradigm of the world that they're working in. So that's a very basic thing that we do. Be explicit about it. Okay, at Zingerman's we have a lot of opportunities for people to take other classes and to learn more. I would say at the bakery, to be honest, this has not been the most popular thing, but the woman I was working on the presentation with, she works at Zingtrain, and for the people who work at Zingtrain, having this opportunity is meaningful to them, so I included it. You never know what might be going on in your organization. Okay, open book management. Has anyone ever, do any of you know about open book management? Yes, does anyone practice it in their organization? This is another thing that Zingerman's did not make up. Have any of you heard about the great game of business, Jack Stack? Okay, there's a book that came out a long time ago, and it was Jack Stack and a group of employees were in a plant, I think it was in Missouri, and it was going out of business, and the employees bought the plant. And then they figured out how to run the plant together and bring it back to financial success. From that, they started this great game of business and teaching other businesses how to get employee engagement and actually running and managing organizations. And I don't know if they coined the term open book management or not, but basically what it means is that you share all or most or the most important relevant information with everybody on the team about the key metrics of the business so that people can participate with you and make good decisions and help you run the business. The analogy that's often used is, can you imagine playing a sports game and not knowing the rules of the game? Not really, right? I mean, if you're on a basketball court and you didn't know really, was it good to put the ball in the hoop or was it bad to put the ball in the hoop? Was it good to be stopped because you were, or not even told what it meant to double dribble? I mean, if you don't know those things, it's really kind of hard to participate in any effective way, right? And is it fun to play a game if you don't know the rules? No, right? So the whole idea of open book management in business is to tell people what the rules of the game are. What are the things that really impact the success of the business so that they can more actively participate as they're doing their work, feel more fulfilled, and do a better job. So we've been practicing open book management there are 10 different businesses, and we range in size from like one person in one to over 200 in another. 3 years old to 42 years old businesses. The range of revenue is like $1 million to 23 million, so the whole gamut. And so we're practicing this in all these businesses in varying degrees. I saw a hand.
Yeah, just a question on open book management. Is that P&L level or is it more KPIs or KPI or?
It can be whatever you think your team is ready to do. So what we say is you can see the entire P&L. Like at the bakery, everybody, they can see everything. And the only thing that we don't share is people's wages. People will share their wages with one another, so we don't need to. As we all know, we don't need to share them. And if they don't want to, they don't have to. Now, I'm a pragmatist. So it really depends on where your team is and how developed they are, how much you want to share and what will be effective. Now, even though we at the bakery will show everybody everything on the P&L, it doesn't really matter to most people what the rent is. Because you know what? There's nothing that they can do about the rent. They're not negotiating the rent. They're not generally making decisions about increasing the square footage of the bakery. That doesn't come up very frequently anyway. And so what we generally share are the things that people really have an impact on. So everybody, we always report on sales, food cost, labor cost, then maybe operating supplies, how much parchment paper are you using, how many labels, don't be using labels just to decorate your locker, right? I mean, you've probably all seen that happen. There are real expenses in these things. We might share the cost of fixing equipment because people are using the equipment and we want to impress upon everybody how much it costs to fix it or to replace it. So it really depends. Also, I would say that at the beginning, when we're starting with this, we start small. And maybe start with something that's actually a problem so that people will engage with it. So if the problem is too much overtime, then you might just share one number every week with everybody. How much overtime was there last week? And it's not just sharing the information, so we have these meetings every week that in the great game of business, they call huddles, so we call them huddles. And they're department meetings. It could be a business meeting if there are only 4 of you who work there. And I gotta tell you, we didn't do this at the bakery. So it really started in 2000. The bakery opened in 92. When there were 8 of us at the bakery, the founder of the bakery, Frank Carollo, he said, I'm not having meetings. We don't need to have a meeting. We all were in the same room together, 11 hours a day. We can talk about this stuff, right? So don't get hung up on some of the practicalities of it. At the beginning, he would share with us what the sales number was for the week. Or he would share with us when he found out what the labor number was for the week. And then we would talk about why it was like that and what we could do to possibly improve it in the future. When people really get into doing this, they have what we call a departmental operating report board, and there's a whiteboard, and it might have 10 different metrics on it, and different people in the department or the business will each own a line, and they have to report, okay, what was the budget for it this week, what was the actual, and then what are we going to forecast for next week, and then discuss with the whole team how are we going to reach that. Now, if you're in that place in your business and you have all that information and you are organized and you have teams that could do it, that's ultimately what it looks like. But if you're not in that place, that's okay. You can just choose one number and share it and teach people about it and then have them help you and help the business improve on that number. So, and it's not just about finances. It could be that we're having a lot of accidents in the bakery. And that's one of the things that's on that board. So we report every week. How many accidents were there and what kind of accidents were they? Oh, everybody's cutting themselves. How come? Well, I might think that I know everything that's going on in the bakery, but maybe I don't. Maybe somebody said, well, actually, I haven't seen the guy come who sharpens the knives, and so the knives are really dull. And maybe we're having a lot of cuts because the knives are like, oh, you haven't seen it? Doesn't he come every week? I said, doesn't he come every week? Yeah, but we haven't seen him. So then you're like, okay, dig back about why this isn't happening. So there's power in the group because people see things from different perspectives than, say, some of us as the leaders see it. We don't actually have all the information. So when we meet with people and we discuss these things, they actually share with us things that we didn't know. As a part of this, we also engage the staff when we're doing our budgeting for the next year. So many of the staff don't have that much to say about some of the numbers, but they help us decide sort of what qualitative goals we want to do. How do we want to improve our food safety this year? Or what new products might we want to work on? What are people excited about? What new equipment might be beneficial? When would be a good time to implement it? Those sorts of things. And then finally, in our organization, we actually share the winnings. So we call it gain sharing here. It could be profit sharing. What we mean by gain sharing is in many of our businesses, there's not that much profit. And so what we do is we write a budget and then we say anything that we beat the budget by, we're going to share back with everybody. And there's a defined game and everybody kind of knows what it is. And you can track during the year. So it's another way to get people to focus on the success of the business and to receive some reward for it as well. Okay, so open book management, honestly, I think of all the things we've done at Zingerman's over the year is probably the most impactful. And it has relieved an incredible amount of stress from managers and leaders and made it a lot less lonely because we have very good conversations and many people know and understand what's going on in the business. On a much smaller note, we have open meetings and a lot of cross-business committees. So, maybe you're in an organization that doesn't really have meetings, but you might think, oh, I'm kind of alone here and I shouldn't be sharing my issues with the staff. Well, in our experience, having people involved and letting them see what some of the issues are really has been helpful over the years. They have ideas that they can share, and then it's an incredible way to build leaders. Because even if they don't have anything to share, but the meeting is open and they come and attend, they hear, they listen. They maybe only understand 30% in their first year there, but they come again. And as they're working in the bakery and they're exposed to more things over time, they really develop a much better understanding. And then when we're ready and we need another person in leadership, we've already done an incredible amount of the training. It's also been our experience that when meetings aren't open, there's a lot of what are they deciding in there? Thinking that there's, some secret conversation that might be happening that, and sometimes maybe could be happening or isn't happening at all. It's just sort of talking about all the things that they are also experiencing in the business. So we say that all the meetings are open, anyone who wants to attend can. How many people do you think attend?
10%.
Not even. So, you say, well, why do you do it? Well, I think sometimes people just want to know that they can come. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily want to come, but then they trust you if you say you can come. And we have managers meetings at the bakery every 2 weeks. I send out the agenda to everyone. I say in all caps, everyone's welcome. Please come. If you only want to come for 20 minutes because there's one thing on the agenda that you want to hear, come for those 20 minutes. You don't have to sit through the whole meeting. Very few people come. But I think that they trust us and they know that it's open to them, and so if they wanted to come, they could come. And that builds a really good part of our relationship with them.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
How do you schedule those? Because there are so many different moving roles.
Yeah. You mean, well, we pick a time.
And then it's just the time.
Yeah, it's just
okay,
the
got
time.
it.
Right,
All
because there's no, our bakery, like probably a lot of people's organizations, is almost 24 hours, so there's no time that's perfect for everyone. Try to pick a time that's the best for anyone. In all of Zingerman's, we have committees about safety, training, benefits, and in those committees, there are people of all different levels from all the different businesses. And the reason why is that we feel like we get much better business decisions because we have a diversity of people in the room. So think about the benefits committee. If it was all just a bunch of leaders like me and we're all now kind of 50 and above, what are we thinking about? We are thinking about our health insurance, but we're thinking about our 401ks, but if most of the people that are working are 23 to 30, that's not what they're thinking about, right? So the 23-year-olds now, because of the Affordable Care Act, most of them are still on their parents' health insurance. So when we say, oh, we give you health insurance, they don't really care because they're not going to worry about that till they're 26. What are they worried about? Well, there's a variety of things. Plus, they're mostly worried about just how much their basic compensation is. And then maybe you have a group of people who are, 30 to 40, and they're worried, they're starting to have children, and they are starting to pay for daycare, and so they are interested in a lot of different benefits. So on many of these, on all of the committees, there's a whole mix of people from the different businesses and different levels within the organization so that we can come together and hear all those perspectives and hopefully the goal is to make better decisions. We also teach about decision-making styles because we've learned that we have to be very clear on who's making the decision. So most of the decisions in our organization are consultative. That means the leader will say, this is a decision I have to make, and I'm going to come to all of you for your input, but I'm going to make the decision. Sometimes if you don't say that, then people start to think that they're going to make the decision, and that can be a problem because maybe they're not going to make the decision. Then actually what was supposed to be a good situation where you're getting engagement, now they're mad at you because they think that you're not allowing them to do something. But we have plenty of decisions in the organization that we do make by consensus. And all the Zingerman's partners meet every 2 weeks, and any decisions that we make together are by consensus. And then at the bakery, in our managers meeting, we make those decisions by consensus. So everybody has to agree with 80% of what we've decided, but when they walk out of the room, they're going to support it 100% in making it happen. Of course, we use command and delegation sometimes. So I don't want to suggest that this is a world in which the leaders never say, this is what we have to do now. There's emergencies. We're not going to stand around and say, what do you think? Should we leave or should we not leave? Right? Right. No, but somebody in charge is going to say, we're getting, the carbon monoxide, is going off. We have to get it out of the building. Or the government has said, this is how we have to do this, whether we all think it's kooky or not, we're going to do it. So, there are some command decisions, and there's definitely lots of delegation. Okay, bottom line change. So in our, in most of our organizations, there's probably change, right? Things change. They never stay the same. We may wish that they would stay the same. My son is working with me now. Carrie has heard about that. Always an interesting situation. And he told me he's running our retail shop, and about 6 months in, he said, I just want to set it and go. Get right. Yeah, I wish I could do that too, but it's not gonna happen because things change and you can't just set it. You might set it to going really well for 3 months, but then something happens. You can't not be watching. You got to be involved. So there's change, and in our organization we have a recipe for change, and anybody can start the change. Because you might be working in a position and I don't know exactly what's going on in there that maybe needs to be adjusted. And so you can start the process. And there's a clear process for how to do it, but the main point that I wanted to bring up here is that people are taught how to do this and then encouraged to do it. So I'll give you a couple of examples where they didn't actually use this process, but I tried to bring it up with the staff so that they know that their opinion really does count. We decided, my business partner and I, to have office hours. Because although we're there every day, people often don't come and talk to us. Of course we say hello and maybe we chit chat a little bit, but if they have something on their minds, they don't always say it. So we have these office hours and you can sign up and come in and talk. And they usually say, well, I didn't say this to you because you seemed like you were so busy. I'm sure you've all, so we didn't want to interrupt. We're here because we want to hear from you. And of course, we're always going to look like we're busy because what are we going to do? Sit around and do nothing? But you can always interrupt. So we have these times. And in them, two great ideas. Well, two people said things and that my partner and I had in the back of our minds that were bothering us. But I don't know if any of you had this situation. You might be thinking about something, but then nobody else is really saying anything about it, so you don't do anything about it. And then they came, so one woman came and we had remodeled, and the managing partner's office used to be connected to the service office, and in the remodel it got disconnected. And I kind of thought that this was not a good situation. Number one, when they were connected, each group could overhear conversations in the other that gave groups information that we didn't know the other one didn't have. And often it was information that people needed. And it was, it didn't mean, we always tried to give all the information and share it, but sometimes you don't, or something slips up, or they don't have it as soon as maybe as would be good. Then we separated these offices and the information flow completely stopped. So I didn't feel good about that. I felt like I had no idea what was really going on in there. And then the new office for the service team had a door, and they were connected right to a production area, so it was really noisy, so they always kept their door closed. I had the sense that probably this was not doing good things for sort of morale, or maybe of them having conversations that maybe they wouldn't have if they were a little bit more open, and not because they wanted to have those, but you feel a little freer, and then they start grousing about the wholesale customers and saying things that probably they don't even want to say about. So we're having this meeting, and this woman comes from the service office, and she says exactly those things. This isn't working, and I really wish that we could remodel because we're not behaving in a way that I really think that we should behave in there. And she wasn't the manager, she was just an hourly person. And I'm not feeling good about it. And And also, I feel really disconnected from you guys. Like, wow, okay, that's how I was feeling too. And now that she said that, so now we've remodeled. So when you come to visit the bakery, you'll see that we actually changed the floor plan. So I tell those stories also to the staff to show them their opinion counts. Yes, this is not some massive thing, but over and over again, as people say these sorts of things, many things change because of the sharing of information and listening to one another. And people can do it also in a more formal way through this bottom line change process. Okay, we also do staff surveys. I have to tell you, we have not done them since the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we used these questions. They came from a Gallup survey. When people gave affirmative, the people who gave affirmative answers to these questions were noted by their companies as people they wanted to keep. So, and this was what was most important to those high performers. The number one thing was, do I know what's expected of me at work? Do I have the materials and equipment? It just really also models, if you can remember way back to that initial training compact sign. So this can be a really good employee questionnaire, or it can be good just as a sort of tool, a measure for ourselves as leaders to think about, do people I'm working with, do they really know what's expected every day? Number 4, in the last 7 days, have I given recognition or praise to someone for the work that they did? Number 10, do people who are working with me have the opportunity to learn and grow? So I think I find these questions useful just as a measure myself to think about how well I'm doing my job, and they, for many years, served us well as the staff survey. We did it twice a year. We probably did it for about 6 years. It got kind of old, it lost its juice, and then I got to change things up. And then the pandemic hit, and we stopped doing it, and we're about to start doing something again.
Is it anonymous, or do they?
It is anonymous, and we've had arguments about that. Mm-hmm. In an organization where you want to develop trust and you believe in transparency, you might think, okay, well, I want it, if I'm going to be transparent, I want you to be transparent. Our human resources people say, yes, that's a really nice idea, but people still won't be transparent. So in the name of getting information and having people feel safe and secure, we'll have it continue to be anonymous. Staff ownership is something that the founders have a company that owns the intellectual property. They have made it possible for all of us to buy some of that company. And then we also have a game that's it's like you're buying one share in another organization. It's all very complicated, so I don't want to bore you with the details. But anyone who's been there for a few months, if you want, it costs $1,000, but you can do payroll deductible, it's for deductions over a 2-year period, and it allows everybody to really feel like, and actually have some ownership in the organization if they want it, and we get payouts for it if the whole organization
And
is
can you
doing
keep
well.
it if you leave?
So if you buy the intellectual property, you can keep it when you leave. The item that's called a community share, which is $1,000, when you leave, you
Forfeit it.
You forfeit it,
Okay.
but you get your money back. So it's like zero risk. You get your $1,000 and whatever you made on it, and it's really, if we could all invest more, it's a really good investment. We've been paying out at the highest rate, which is $500 a year. So, it's a nice thing for people. And then I'm not going to play this video because we don't have time, but the partners many years ago decided that we really wanted to have staff have a say in our partner consensus. And so right now there are always 4 non-owners who sit in the partners group and participate in the consensus. Okay, so why do we do this? I think that it makes the work better, the work that people are doing, because it's work that's more meaningful. Even if it's work that's not that meaningful, because those of us who make food, we know that there's a lot of repetitive work. We may do a lot of the same things every day, and we may do, maybe we're making 1,000 of something at a time. But you can be thinking about that work in a different way as you're doing it. And the more that we allow engagement and for people to understand what's going on in the bakery and what's important about what they're doing, I think the work becomes more meaningful and interesting, and they learn and grow from it. By having all this staff engagement, I've said it many times, I think it allows us to make better decisions. And then most importantly, I think it improves the bottom line because of that. It reduces turnover and increases the average tenure. So I looked up last night, we have a new HRIS system, and it says that the average tenure in the bakery right now is 5 years. Wow, it's pretty good. But that, we have a bunch of people within the first year that kind of churns. And then I would say the first 3 years, there's a churn. But after 3 years, if people stay for 3 years, then they're staying for a long time. So we have a monthly little newsletter that we write, and there were about 12 people who were having their work anniversary in June, and we added up their tenure, and it was 135 years. So we have a lot of people who have been there for 10, 13, 18, 26 years. And I think it's because we tried to make it a good place to work. I think it's supposed to give you better morale. You'll see tomorrow. I mean, it is still work, correct? Right? So people, it might not seem like it's a party going on when you come tomorrow. It should make work a little more fun, and I think it actually helps with stress for managers because we're sharing in the whole understanding of what we're doing. So it's not just us. I think we have time. So, when there's a crisis, it's really great to have had these things in place, especially for people to understand some of the finances. So how many of you were leading in your organizations during the downturn of 2008, 2009? It was a very scary time here in Michigan. I don't know where you were, but we're right near the car industry, which was completely tanking. And so we saw that a little bit early that things were going badly, and it looked like our sales were going to go down by about 30%, and we could see that was sort of in February, and we anticipated that if things really went that way, we were going to run out of cash by the next October. Well, because we had a group of people who understood a lot, not everything, but understood a lot, we could have really meaningful conversations with the leadership team and then with the staff about what are we going to do? How are we going to manage this? What can we cut from the budget? And it was really great because people were okay with cutting their wages, people were okay with foregoing bonuses, and the staff agreed that it was okay not to have employee lunch anymore, which was a big item. We were spending tens of thousands of dollars. We had one person who that was their job, plus all of the food, and the staff said, yeah, we don't need to do that, we'll bring our own lunch. So one of the benefits of all this engagement is when things get really tough, people already know how to talk to one another, and they have a lot of information, so they can participate actively when things are hard, and there's already a lot of trust involved. Okay, is it all perfect? What do you think? No. Okay, there are definitely challenges. And I should have done this differently and done the benefits and not end on challenges, but okay. So I like to tell you sort of the truth about things. It's not easy. It's a big cultural switch for a lot of people. So staff sometimes are like, why are you asking me? Don't you know? So they're insecure, or they feel insecure, like, don't you know what's going on? Can't you answer this question? Or they're, you don't pay me enough to think about that. Or, hey, I just want a job. Look, I'm going to school. I don't want to think so much about this. I'm just here to make some money. So all of that happens. And it's okay to have some of that. We discuss amongst the partners, like what percentage of your staff could not really buy into the culture or not really want to participate. You can probably have a good 30% who are doing that, because if they do their job well, that's fine. If they're not negative or undermining, okay, they don't need to participate in that way. But for those of who want to, it's still a big cultural switch. It's like, what is going on here and how am I supposed to behave? And, in those questions, it was like, does my opinion count? A lot of people say to me, I didn't think it was my place to say. Because that's been ingrained in us, Is it our place to say? Who are we to say? So we often have to say, it is your place to say. And, you have a perspective, I have a perspective. Probably in the end, neither one will be what we go with, but it will be some amalgamation of all of it, and you'll learn over time that it's okay to say things, and we'll see what happens. It requires learning and development for the leaders, because people have to understand what we're trying to do, and then they live it, and then they learn some more, and we make mistakes, and we have problems, and then they learn, and so it can be challenging. And not everybody wants to do it, you know? They said, I wanted to bake. I didn't want to worry about this. There might be some opportunity cost because it takes effort. If we weren't doing this, maybe we would have time to do something else. And then the second to last one is the thing that's most coming up now. There are a lot of expectations because of it. And in our small community in Ann Arbor, people have ideas about what it means to work at Zingerman's. And they come in with some very, 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 very high expectations. And you know what? We don't always meet them because we are just people. And you know, it takes time to do this well. And even if you can do it well, it doesn't mean that I try to say to people, it doesn't mean that this is the Garden of Eden. You didn't find nirvana. I mean, it is still work. We have work to do. You know, and some days are going to be hard, and sometimes there's going to be conflict, or your coworker is going to annoy you, or you're not going to like the way your manager said something to you. That's just part of life, and we try to have that happen less frequently, but it will happen. So in this particular, I don't know what your experience is, but I would say in the last few years, it's become a more demanding workforce, at least that we're experiencing here. And even if you're 100% in support of many of the ideas that are in the world right now, we still may not be reaching it as quickly as the staff wants us to. And then, you know, with the sort of appeal of unions that is now happening with a younger crowd, that is, even if you think that, look, we're sharing the numbers, we're sharing in the profits, aren't you happy? Not necessarily, because there can still be this idea that unions are going to make it even better. So it's a moving target. So even if you think you're providing a great work environment, it may not be good enough. And then, as I said kind of earlier, it's not a culture for everyone, so not everyone is going to really love it or want to stay in it. So, you know, maybe we will lose some people for whom we wish that they would stay. Okay, so that's it. But there's a little bit of time if anyone has a reaction or a question.
I have a question about your huddles. How do you schedule them? Is there like how does that happen?
So that every single department, because there's a cake department and a pastry kitchen and whatever, they schedule it at a time that works in their production flow. And the huddles are only supposed to be like 15 or 20 minutes. They're not, you know, and you're standing. You know, it's just stop production for a minute and do it. And through much of the year, people can find a good time for it. But during, you know, sort of the peak holiday season, maybe we don't do huddles. Yeah, is that perfect? No. But is it life? Yes. It's kind of game time. You know, it's you're in the playoffs. We're not going to do a huddle.
Dealing with management stuff, you go over that monthly. Is that a monthly huddle activity where you share numbers or share whatever metric is important?
In the departments, it's weekly because they can do their sales and labor, and they can do things like accidents or credits or customer complaints can be done weekly. Monthly for the whole, we do it monthly for the whole business. And that one we do online, and very few people attend it, but we tape it and then we send it out later. Other questions?
More comments.
Yeah.
I've heard you speak in the past that I've done for 10 years ago or whatever. And I feel better now hearing that not all of this works all the time for everyone. Because I was feeling this weird doing things wrong when we tried it. Because it's like when we tried to do the open book, nobody seemed to care when I gave them the information.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why am I doing all this work?
Right.
And attention to it.
Right, yeah. So I think it takes a lot of time, and you know, we started doing this in a big way, the open book in 2000, and each business took different amounts of time, and even within businesses, different areas caught on more. So I think one thing that I've experienced is people have to see that they actually have some control, and what happens in the meeting makes a difference. If it's meetings that nothing ever makes a difference afterwards, you know, nothing changes because of it, then people don't want to come to the meeting, or they don't think it's worth their time or effort. So baby steps, taking time, and then sometimes like generate, one of the bad things about our business is we have turnover. One of the good things is we have turnover. So sometimes as you have a new crew, and this is just the way it is, it can be a little easier and they embrace it more. Thanks for listening, considering it.